Hello, everyone. To those just tuning in, welcome. To those who've been checking out sessions throughout the day, welcome back. We hope you're enjoying the content and looking forward to more awesome presentations coming up. A big thank you to our partners and speakers for helping us deliver a fantastic program. A quick reminder to join our Slack channel to interact with other attendees and join selected speakers for Q&A. You can find the link in the menu at the top of this page. Happy viewing.
Hi there, my name is Sebastian, and I'm a senior product manager with N26, which is a digital bank. And my talk today is about career fuel for product managers, how to be more strategic and grow your career. And as the title says, this talk is all about you and your career. And I want to share a very powerful framework with you, which is called Career Fuel, that's going to help you grow your career. So there's three types of fuel: transportable skills, enduring relationships, and meaningful experiences. And if you accumulate these three types of fuel, that's what's going to power your career and take it to the next level. And basically, it doesn't matter if you're an associate PM just starting out or an experienced chief product officer. What we all have in common is that we have many years of a career in front of us. And so accumulating this fuel is going to help us make the most of it. And that's what this talk is all about. Now, before I explain each type of fuel and how you can accumulate it effectively, I want to start with where this framework came from. So originally, it came from advertising, from someone named Brian Featherston Hall, who is a CEO of one of the divisions at Ogilvy, which is one of the most prestigious advertising firms in the world. And he shared this framework called Career Fuel in a book called The Long View. And now you might be thinking, okay, advertising, what does that have to do with anything? I'm in product management, as am I. So why is this relevant? And basically, it's relevant because while the framework itself is very broad, we can make it actionable for product management. And so it's one of these things that I wish I knew sooner, and that's why I want to share them with you today. And I also want to make the framework 100% actionable for product management. So that's why all the examples I'm going to share from my own life and from others are going to be 100% geared towards product management so that you can take them away and basically get started the following day if you want to. So we all know the theory, we have our ambitious career goals, we're here today, and now we're super strategic on a straight line to achieve our goals. And unfortunately, what I found is that myself and many other PMs I know and talk to, it's not been like this because the practice is wild. Because product management is a roller coaster. We're very busy people and we get dragged into many different things because expectations are just so high. So people ask you, can you help with this? Can you help with that? And then, oh my God, we only have 1 month left in Q2, which, by the way, is the truth. And so with all of these demands, how the hell are you supposed to stay strategic and take a step back and only do stuff that advances you and helps you reach your goals, right? So that's something I've always been struggling. And I always ask myself the question, well, how can I be strategic? How can I do that? And basically, Career Fuel is the framework that really changed my outlook on these things and helped me become intentional and strategic. So let me explain the three types of fuel to you in more detail so that you can also make it your own. So the first type of fuel is transportable skills. So what are transportable skills? They are the opposite of domain skills. So I guess most of us know what domain skills are. It's things like specific industry knowledge. So in my personal situation, I work at a fintech company, a bank. And so there's a lot to know about payment schemes and regulation, but also about the market and competition and customer expectations, all of that stuff. Then another type of domain skills is like, for example, your company's data warehouse. Do you have the skills it takes to navigate it? Do you know which table sits where and how to get those insights? The same applies to other internal processes that there might be. And another typical thing is tools. So the A/B testing tool that your company uses, how to do advanced things with Jira or whatever. And so these are all domain skills. And transportable skills are really the opposite of that, in the sense that they're universal. No matter your position, your company, your industry, they will always matter. And these are things like communication, speaking, writing, listening as well, giving feedback, all these communication skills. Leadership, collaboration. So do you have the skills it takes to be an effective leader? And do you have enough leadership styles that you can adapt to the situation at hand? And then, of course, emotional intelligence, which is hugely important. So, self-awareness and self-management, but also the ability to empathize with others and also influence others and be persuasive. And of course, productivity on the efficiency side, like time management, all that stuff. On the effectiveness side, strategic thinking, decision making, cognitive biases, all of that kind of stuff. So these are transportable skills. Why? Because it doesn't matter what your current job title is or the industry or the company. If you change companies or industries, these skills will go with you. And what's even more important is that as you move up and become more senior, these transportable skills matter more and more, and the domain skills start mattering less and less. So basically, what you will start to realize is that domain skills, well, this is where most people will push you towards too, and these are the most immediate ones and tangible ones. They're actually decreasing their value over time because tools change, so you have to constantly relearn stuff. The moment you change a company, you will lose all the company-specific domain skills, whereas your transportable skills, they stay with you over time. It actually compounds, and over time, as they become more relevant, they become more and more valuable to you. And that's why the first lesson I want you to take away from this talk is like you should delegate domain skills as much as possible. Of course, you don't want to forget about them because they're important and you need to learn as much as you can to get the job done. But anything beyond that, you should delegate. Don't get dragged into learning those because they're right there and tangible. Instead, invest as much of your time and effort as possible into building your transportable skills because this compounds over time. So really build your communication skills, leadership skills, emotional intelligence, and become a productive person. So that's the first lesson. The question, of course, how are you going to do that? What you can do, of course, you start with 360 feedback. So ask people you work with, what's their perception of you? This is going to give you your strengths and your weaknesses. So you'll know yourself, and you can then align that with your long-term goals. And that's what's going to give you your focus areas. And these are the transportable skills that you want to focus on. The main point here is think about skills and try to make it in a way that no matter if you were to change industries, these would still be relevant. So try to make it as transportable as possible. And that really is the first type of fuel, transportable skills. Let's go to the second type of fuel, which is enduring relationships. And no surprise to see relationships here. Business and especially product management is all about people. And if you put yourself in the center, you're going to have many different relationships. And one of the most important ones is a relationship with your boss. And many people kind of invest a lot in this relationship because your boss is the one who promotes you and you have these one-on-ones with them. So that's great. But I still think that many people have a good opportunity to make it deeper than that. So see your boss not just as your boss, but as a human being. Empathize with them just as you would empathize with a customer and put yourself in their shoes and help them be more successful, and also just treat them as a friend and get to know them on a human level, right? As a human being, because they're someone who knows you very well and they're also someone who's ahead of you so they can open doors for you in the future. So that's a relationship you should cultivate, the one with your boss. Another one is, of course, the one with your development team. So these are the people, developers, designers, that you spend your day-to-day with usually, and these are the people you're in the trenches. So you have team outings with them, all that stuff, but beyond that, you can cultivate deeper relationships by being curious, ask them questions, learn from them, and stay close to them even after they leave your team or your company. Check up on them, because again, even beyond your current status quo, they will go on to do amazing things, even start their own companies, and so who knows, maybe you'll meet each other in the future. Then the PM team at your company, right? Other fellow product managers. And funnily enough, I've seen it at many high growth companies because there are no processes in place and stuff like this. People get dragged into their work with the development team. They see their boss from time to time, but they actually don't interact with other product managers. So if you're in this kind of situation, create a space for you to talk, or a weekly meeting where all the PMs can exchange. And if you already have that format, benefit from it. Suggest stuff, share tools, frameworks, knowledge, feedback, whatever it might be. But again, be intentional and cultivate those relationships. And the same applies to your stakeholders. Unfortunately, many PMs see their stakeholders as almost like a necessary evil, and you have to talk to them once a quarter when a project starts, and that's it. Otherwise, you avoid them because they will ask for new features. I think that's the wrong mindset, and I think that many of us have an opportunity to improve here in the sense of, again, treating them like human beings. These are people we can learn from. people who have needs and desires. Maybe we can help them, maybe they can help us. And that's a really important type of relationship you can cultivate. And that was just looking inside of your company. So if you look outside of your company, you have clients, partners, investors. One example from my personal life is my previous company, which is called Typeform, which is like a software as a service company. One of the investors created a Slack group for employees of their portfolio companies. And it was amazing because I asked to be on there, and then I suddenly was interacting with CEOs of other companies, and they were asking questions about product management, and I was able to help them out. We even went out for lunch with one of them. And that's amazing. These are the kinds of relationships you have to look for, you have to be proactive about. Same applies to the product management community as a whole. You're doing the first step, you're watching videos and conference talks and attending those events, but you have to go beyond that. Meet people, ask them deep questions, go beyond the small talk and really put yourself out there and get to know people. And then, of course, there's the rest of the world, even beyond our little bubbles. And so get to know people. Whatever your goals might be, it's going to be a very different approach you're going to take. The main point here is really to be strategic and being proactive and being intentional and cultivating real human relationships. And then beyond relationships with people, there's actually a second type, which is hugely important for us in business, which is the relationship with your employer and the employer brand. So I put a bunch of examples here, but I'm sure you've all seen the consultant coming in, which is like ex-Google. And the stuff you were proposing where no one was listening, suddenly they say the same thing, but everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing, and we're going to try it out. Why is that? It's because they come from a place that's known to be good in product management. And so people instinctively associate that person with that brand. And that's what gives them a lot of power in the sense, because they have this authority and that helps people listen to them and that helps them get their point across. And so the message I want you to take away from this is that you have to be intentional about who you associate yourself with as well. So think about yourself in a few years. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be that consultant? Do you want to be a startup founder? Do you want to be a chief product officer? Depending on your answer and depending on which type of companies you want to work with, it's going to be a very different conversation to have when you look for your next job. It's like, do you want to associate yourself with a big name in tech like Apple or Google or Microsoft? Or do you want to join at some point a high growth startup like Airtable, Notion, Figma and become part of a success story, or something slightly more established but still not as mainstream like MailChimp, for example, and learn from people there? Or do you even want to start your own business and try to go through something like Y Combinator or get the fancy VC to invest? But the main point is not to do it for that sake, but it's to be aware that this relationship has a big influence and then use that to your advantage. So be intentional about that as well. And this is really the second type of fuel, enduring relationships with people and with employers and brands. And the last and third type of fuel is meaningful experiences. Of course, you can have the best skills in the world, the best network in the world. If you don't apply it and do things, it doesn't matter. So practice makes perfect. That's why gathering meaningful experiences is really super important for your career. And so let's start by looking at the basis of everything, which is you're a product manager. And so what kind of meaningful experiences can you get there? Well, the first one is shipping stuff. So ABS, always be shipping. That applies to product management hugely because it's the most important thing. Shipping real features to customers, seeing how it performs, knowing the impact and learning from that. And it doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor, push your team to develop things and develop things and develop things and ship them. And if you're a head of product or a chief product officer, coach your team of product managers into shipping on a regular basis, because that's really the stuff that brings you the experience you need as a product manager at any level. And here's one experience from my own career. When I was at Typeform, we built the first native integration from Typeform, where you would send form responses from Typeform directly into MailChimp. And that was amazing because it was the first native integration we built, so we had to create the whole user flow. So we ran a design sprint, which was a great experience to have. And then seeing the whole thing evolve over time, where now there's like 20 or 30 or I don't know how many native integrations at Typeform, and it became this whole business area, right? With like partnerships and co-marketing and all of that stuff. And seeing that evolve and shipping and also learning from the customer feedback and seeing the choices being made and all of that stuff, that's incredible learning, and that's the kind of experience you need to grow in your career as a product manager. So whenever possible, ask for these kinds of opportunities, go after them, and then do it and see things through. And that applies to everything you do in your day-to-day, however you want to spend your time. First of all, be proactive, which means don't wait for things to fall into your lap, but ask for them and seek them out. And the second one is be strategic, meaning you can also say no to things. So if someone asks you, oh, can you help with this? Sometimes you might say no, because I have more important things that I can focus on. So, that's really important. Be proactive and strategic. So this was looking at yourself as a product manager. That's the most basic unit. But beyond that, product management is at core a leadership job. And so you need to grow your leadership skills, and you need to seek meaningful experiences as a leader. And to me, growing as a leader means putting yourself out there. And I really mean that in two main ways. The first one is to put yourself out there as a person. Meaning, if there's a tough conversation you've been avoiding at work, go for it and apply Radical Candor, which, by the way, is a book I highly recommend. And that's the kind of thing you want to do. Instead of avoiding conflict, seek it and learn from it. Know how to give tough feedback. Know how to mentor people, develop people, coach people, manage teams of people. So seek out those experiences that make you grow as a people leader, because that's hugely important, and you'll need that, because that's what product managers are. Even if we don't manage our development teams, we need to be a leader for them. And so the more you grow your leadership skills and your people skills, the more you're going to grow your career. And putting yourself out there in terms of people, but also in terms of thought leadership. And here on the slide, you can see Martin Ericsson, who is one of the founders of Mind the Product, which is this amazing series of conferences and meetups and product management training and all of these things now. But it started really small as like a meetup in London, I think, and then they grew it over time. And Martin has done this amazing job of giving talks, being this connector glue for people and organizing meetups and conferences. And he's put himself at the center of all of that and become a thought leader for product management. And that's what you can do as well. And you don't have to run the world's biggest product conference, of course. You're going to start small, and you can start by writing a blog and sharing your thoughts, or speaking in podcasts, or at conferences, or at local meetups, or whatever it might be. But what matters is have an opinion, put yourself out there, become a brand, and be perceived as a thought leader and not just a follower. So that's really the experiences you're going to seek as a leader. And then this is something that most people forget, especially in a professional setting, is that we're not just product managers and leaders, we're also fundamentally human beings. And there's a ton of meaningful experiences you can have as a human being, which have nothing to do with leadership and product management, but will hugely influence your work and yourself as a product manager. So the most obvious example of this is traveling. So you might move abroad for your next job and spend a few years, in a whole different continent. Or if you don't want to do that, or you cannot do that, you can just spend your next vacation in a new place and discover something new, because in the end it's all about discovering new perspectives and way of doing things and ways of seeing life. And one example that stuck with me was the example of Notion and the two co-founders there. So let me quickly tell you the story. So they started out in San Francisco, and they had built a first version of the product which was working kind of well, but then they had to add more stuff, and unfortunately they had built it in a way that their tech stack didn't allow them to add the features that needed to be built. And so at some point they realized, holy shit, it needs to be a rebuild. And at the same time, they were running out of money. So it wasn't the most pleasant situation to be in. So what they decided to do was something quite radical. They literally sublet their apartment in San Francisco to save on the rent, took a plane and flew to Kyoto, Japan, because it was cheaper and also because it was different. And what they did there was they didn't speak any Japanese, and no one there spoke English. So actually they just coded all day. But being away from it all, being in a new place and being exposed to a new culture with their own food and ways of life and design and aesthetics and all of these things fundamentally changed how they build Notion, right? And if you use their product today, you'll see the results of this amazing trip. And so that's just one type of meaningful experience that has nothing to do with product management per se, but it's just as a human being, a meaningful experience that can help grow you. And another famous example of this is Steve Jobs, who in his early days when he was in university would sit in calligraphy lectures, even though it had nothing to do with his major, but he just sat there because he found it intriguing and he followed his passion. And what this led to is that it fundamentally shaped his way of looking at aesthetics and design, which later, of course, became Apple and all these products. And that's why typography and the aesthetics there are so amazing. It's because Steve Jobs had developed an eye for these things in his early days with this obscure passion. So what I really encourage you to do is like, don't hide the human side, which many people often do in a business context, but like embrace it. So what's your unique interest or passion or experience? What's your calligraphy or trip to Japan? And what could you do in the future, right? So embrace those things and learn from them and make them meaningful. So that's really what it's about. It's having meaningful experiences as a product manager, mainly shipping stuff, but being intentional about everything you do, putting yourself out there as a leader of people and of thought, and seeking new experience also as a human being to round yourself, which by the way will also make you a lot more happy and fulfilled. And that was really the third type of fuel, which was meaningful experiences. So with these three types of fuel, what they all have in common is that it's about being strategic and putting yourself out there. So don't be afraid, try new things. The main point is you want to accumulate these types of fuel. And in the end, that's what's going to help you moving from being reactive and torn into different places to being laser focused with your goals and knowing that what you're actually looking for is very specific transportable skills, enduring relationships, and meaningful experiences which will help you achieve those goals. So I hope that this framework will help you as much as it helped me. And thank you for your attention. One last thing. I left this QR code here that will take you to a link where you can see a long reading list with like 300 plus links of like articles and books I found that helped me a lot in terms of like learning new skills and finding new experiences, and also the link to Brian Featherston-Hawes' book that I mentioned earlier in the talk. So thank you for listening in, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the talks. Bye bye.